Most people go through life convinced their mind is on their side. They trust every thought it generates. They follow every signal it fires. But that single assumption is exactly what keeps them stuck. Not for a day, not for a week, for years. Because the truth that no one around you will say out loud is this: for most people, the mind is not an ally. It is the primary obstacle between the life they are living and the life they are capable of building. Stay until the end of this video, because you are going to learn exactly why your brain works against you, the 5 specific patterns it uses to keep you small, and the precise Stoic protocol to break them, starting today. Not to feel better, to perform better. You have been there. You decide to change. You set the alarm. You plan to train harder, work with more focus, build something that actually matters. And then the first moment of genuine discomfort arrives, and your mind does not fight you openly. It whispers, reasonably, calmly. It says, "You worked hard yesterday. One more day will not change anything. Start fresh on Monday." And because that voice sounds exactly like your own thinking, measured, logical, seemingly wise, you follow it. And nothing changes. This is not a motivation problem. This is not a discipline problem. This is a training problem. And the Stoics understood it with more precision than most modern psychology ever has. Master your mind, or be mastered by it. And if this message needs to reach someone who is ready to hear it, leave a like now. Every like puts this in front of someone who needs it. And if you are not yet subscribed, subscribe, because here, we do not sell motivation. We build command. Part 1. The Hidden Enemy. Why your brain was never built for the life you are trying to build. Here is the first thing to understand clearly. Your mind is not malfunctioning when it works against you. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The human brain has one directive that overrides everything else: conserve energy and avoid threat. That is the operating system running beneath every plan you make, every goal you set, every decision you attempt. And discomfort, which is the raw material of every meaningful change you will ever build, registers in your brain as a potential threat. Specifically in the amygdala, the threat detection structure that fires before your rational mind has any chance to weigh in. When you feel the friction of difficult work, when the alarm sounds at 5:30, when a hard conversation becomes unavoidable, your amygdala activates. Cortisol rises, your attention narrows, your thinking becomes rigid, and your brain produces its most convincing counter-argument. Not now. Something easier first. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. It is the same threat response that kept your ancestors alive in genuinely dangerous environments, except that in the modern world, it fires at alarm clocks and unread messages. The environment changed. The brain did not. And what makes this enemy so difficult to confront is that a threat from outside is visible. You can prepare for it, respond to it, resist it. But the threat from inside sounds like your own voice. It arrives dressed as wisdom, as self-compassion, as pragmatism. It tells you that you are being realistic, that you are being kind to yourself. And because it uses your own language and your own logic, you grant it authority it has never earned. Epictetus understood this with a precision that still holds 2,000 years later. He was a slave. He was tortured. His leg was broken by his own master. And from that position, with no external freedom, no rights, no power over his circumstances, he articulated the most operationally precise idea in the history of philosophy. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. He was not describing resignation. He was describing a precise cognitive operation. Identify what is within your control. Direct your full effort there. Release everything else. Completely, not performatively. When you apply this principle to the mechanics of the mind, something specific happens in your nervous system. The amygdala response loses intensity. Cortisol drops. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational decision-making, creativity, and clear judgment, comes back online. The handbrake releases, and you begin to execute at the level you are actually capable of. The mind that works against you is not your permanent mind. It is your current default. And defaults can be trained. And if you recognize even one of these patterns in your own life, the next part of this video may change how you see your own mind forever. Part 2. The 5 patterns, how your mind keeps you exactly where you are. These are the 5 most common patterns the untrained mind uses to hold a person in place. You will recognize them, probably from this week. Pattern 1. Procrastination logic. The resistance arrives and your mind generates a highly convincing argument for why now is not the right moment. You need more information. The conditions are not ideal. You should plan more carefully before beginning, and the argument is never entirely wrong, which is precisely what makes it so effective. There is always a legitimate reason to wait. The trained mind begins anyway. Pattern 2. Dopamine distraction. Your phone delivers novel stimulation at a rate that no meaningful task can compete with in the short term. The dopamine hit from a notification is immediate. The reward from completing difficult work is delayed. Your brain, left without active direction, will always choose the immediate signal. Every single time. This is not a character flaw. It is a neurological default that requires deliberate override, not willpower alone. Pattern 3. Discomfort inflation. You imagine beginning a difficult task and your mind presents a projected version of how unpleasant the experience will be. But that projection is almost always significantly worse than the reality. Research consistently demonstrates that humans dramatically overestimate future discomfort and dramatically underestimate their own capacity to handle it. The amygdala is trying to protect you, and in doing so, it keeps you away from the exact experiences that build you. Pattern 4. False rest. Instead of genuine recovery, quiet, intentional, physically restorative, your mind steers you toward passive consumption. More content, more screens, more noise. This feels like rest. It does not function like rest. Your brain stays in a state of low-level stimulation that prevents genuine recovery, which means you return to demanding work already partially depleted. Rest that restores is intentional and quiet. Rest that drains is passive and loud. Pattern 5. Identity lock. When you consistently obey the impulse toward avoidance, you gradually build a self-concept around that pattern. You become someone who knows what to do, but does not do it. And the brain has a deep investment in internal consistency. It generates resistance every time you attempt something that contradicts your established self-image. The mind does not resist change because change is wrong. It resists change because it is defending the identity it has built around your current behavior. This is precisely why Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every single morning. Not to motivate himself, but to recalibrate his self-concept before the day could shape it for him. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not philosophical decoration. This is a daily operational instruction from a man governing an empire in collapse, war, plague, betrayal, and chaos as constants, who chose every morning to direct his attention inward before directing it anywhere else. He was not immune to these 5 patterns, he simply refused to obey them. And if you are recognizing yourself in any of these patterns right now, leave a comment writing, "I act now, not for me, for you." Because writing it is the first act of the identity you are choosing to build. And if this video is opening something in you, share it with someone who is ready to hear it, because this kind of clarity rarely finds people on its own. Part 3. The Stoic turning point. What happens when you stop obeying the mind? Here is the transformation, described not as inspiration but as mechanism. When you consistently choose action over the mind's impulse toward comfort, 3 specific things happen in sequence, and they compound. First, the amygdala response habituates. Neuroscience calls this threat recalibration. When a stimulus that once registered as threatening is encountered repeatedly without the predicted negative consequence, the amygdala's reaction diminishes over time. The discomfort of doing hard things decreases the more you do hard things. The first week of 5:30 mornings is genuinely difficult. The 4th week is significantly less so, not because your circumstances changed, because your brain updated its threat assessment. The experience that once registered as danger begins to register simply as effort, and effort is manageable. Danger is not. That distinction changes everything about how you move. Second, your identity reconstructs itself around your actual behavior. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you make a deposit into your self-concept. You become someone who does what they committed to, even when the mind objects. These deposits accumulate. At a certain point, the identity shifts, and the mind's resistance weakens because it is now in conflict with your established self-concept rather than aligned with it. The brain defends consistency in both directions. Once your self-concept is built on disciplined action, it works to defend that too. Third, and this is the biological basis for what people loosely call being in the zone, when cortisol drops, when the threat response stops dominating your neurochemistry, the prefrontal cortex operates without suppression. You think more clearly, you move more decisively, you execute at a level that feels almost effortless. Not because the task became easier, but because you stopped driving with the handbrake on. Seneca understood the psychological cost of forcing outcomes with a precision that maps directly onto modern neuroscience. He wrote, "It is not that I'm brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing and what is not. The discomfort of disciplined work is not worth fearing. The continuation of a life built around avoiding discomfort is." And that distinction, knowing what actually deserves your cortisol response and what does not, is what separates someone who acts from someone who plans to act indefinitely. Part 4. The Stoic Mind Protocol, the precise daily practice. This is not a relaxation exercise, this is a control exercise. There is a fundamental difference between the two. Relaxation is passive. This is active, precise, and cumulative. Here is the complete protocol. The next time your mind generates one of the 5 patterns, the next time you feel the pull toward postponement, distraction, or the exit from discomfort, do not argue with the thought. Do not try to eliminate it. Do not wait for it to pass. Observe it with complete neutrality, the way you would read a notification on a screen, and identify it by name. Procrastination logic, dopamine distraction, discomfort, inflation, false rest, identity lock. Name it precisely, then respond with one internal sentence. I act now, not because you feel ready, not because the resistance has subsided, not because the conditions are ideal, simply because acting is the only response that trains the system in the direction you want it to go. Epictetus stated the sequence with his characteristic precision. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Identity first, then action. You define who you are. You behave accordingly, regardless of what the mind suggests in the moment. The practical application is straightforward. For 7 consecutive days, each time you notice the mind generating a reason to postpone something that aligns with your actual priorities, act in the opposite direction, quietly, without force, without announcement, as a matter of course. You will discover 2 things without exception. First, that the patterns are remarkably repetitive across entirely different contexts and tasks, because the underlying mechanism is always identical. The mind runs the same program in different situations. Once you see the code, you cannot unsee it. Second, that the patterns lose authority every single day you refuse to obey them. A thought that is never acted upon gradually loses its power to compel action. The mind learns, as every trainable system learns, from what you repeatedly do, not from what you intend, not from what you understand intellectually, from what you actually do every day regardless of how you feel about it. The mind that is currently telling you that discipline is too demanding, that the timing is wrong, that tomorrow is a better starting point, that is not your permanent mind. That is your current default, and defaults can be changed, not through motivation, not through a single declaration, not through understanding alone, through the precise, unglamorous daily practice of observing the thought and acting anyway. Weak minds obey every thought. Disciplined minds question them. And once you build that habit, once you are consistently the one who observes the signal and moves regardless, the mind that was your greatest obstacle becomes your most reliable instrument, not because it stops generating resistance, but because you stopped treating resistance as a reason to stop. This is the Stoic equilibrium. Reason as a way of life, virtue as strength, and discipline as the path. See you in the next video.